That was Nicola Sturgeon today. Well, the other big news from the SNP conference this morning is that the party has elected a new deputy leader, or depute, as they say in Scotland. It's Angus Robertson, and he joins us now from the conference. Angus Robertson, welcome back to the Daily Politics. You lost the Scottish referendum in 2014, but you want another one. Your side lost the Brexit referendum this year, but you want to try and thwart the Brexit process. Do you need to take remedial classes in democracy?
You missed out the key important fact in there, Andrew, which was that 62% of people in Scotland voted to remain in the European Union, and as Democrats, we believe that the people voted remain, then they should remain.
But we voted as United Kingdom. We didn't vote as Scotland or Wales or England. We voted as the UK.
If you'd be so kind as to let me finish answering your first question, Andrew, it would also be fair to point out that in 2014, many people who voted no to Scottish independence did so because they were told that unless they did, we would find ourselves out of the European Union. Now, things have been turned on their head. We are facing the prospect of being taken out of the European Union against the wish of the majority of people in Scotland, and that's why it behoves all Scottish political leaders to work together to find ways of protecting our place in Europe, and that's why we've signalled that we're prepared to work with the UK government to ensure that that happens. The only problem with that, though, is that it takes a UK government to respect the majority of wishes of people in Scotland who want to remain in Europe and to work with the Scottish government to deliver that, and there's no sign whatsoever that the UK government is prepared to do that.
What would trigger a second Scottish referendum?
So I think for viewers down south, I think it's important to understand that there's a process underway in Scotland. The Scottish Government now has experts advising on the different potential routes in which we could protect Scotland's place in Europe. Is there a way, for example, of Scotland remaining within the single market while the rest of the UK leaves? Are there ways of protecting our citizenship rights whilst the rest of the UK takes another course? Now, we need to understand the answers to those questions, but we're looking for them. But we all know, and there's no disagreement about this, that there is a way in which Scotland can remain within the European Union, and that is as a member state. And that's why the First Minister at the SNP conference announced that the route to doing that through a referendum, given that we live in a democracy, is the best way to do that. And we will prepare the groundwork in case there are no other ways in which we can protect Scotland's place in Europe.
So let me try again. What would trigger a second Scottish referendum?
I think if Scotland is taken out of the European Union against the wishes of the people of Scotland, and the only way of protecting our place in Europe is by being a sovereign state, that is what's going to trigger a referendum. We've had a poll this morning that suggests that 55% of people in Scotland are in favour of another referendum if we face the prospects of a hard Tory Brexit, and that's exactly what we're heading towards at the present time. So it's not only about the choices that we make, it's also about the choices that the UK government makes, and Theresa May should have heard by now, if she hasn't yet, that the Scottish Government and the SNP is deadly serious when we say that we expect the voters of Scotland to be respected and the UK government to take their wishes seriously, but that rather depends on the Prime Minister and the Tory party respecting Scotland. Of course, we were told that Scotland is an equal partner in the UK, no less an equal
I understand
partner.
All
there
this.
hasn't been a single iota yet. Well,
let me
the
get
government
another
doesn't,
question.
and
I've
that's
heard
why
all
through
this
your
from you.
programme,
I've heard this many
hoping
times.
to help. No, well,
I'm trying to get some clarity. I'm trying to get through the rhetoric, which I've heard endlessly, and get some clarity. On the government's current timetable, we are scheduled to leave the EU at the beginning of 2019. If that timetable is adhered to, when will there be a second Scottish referendum?
Well, I'm surprised you think that you're having answers from the UK government on anything to do with Brexit, because we sat in Parliament this week and we asked Cabinet Ministers and we asked Prime Minister. No, I don't think we know for certain when the UK is planning to leave the EU. I don't think we know what the conditions are of the UK exiting. I don't think we know whether they want to remain within the single market. I don't think we know whether they're prepared to guarantee the citizenship rights of UK citizens.
Let me try and help you to answer the question. If it is clear that we will not be a member of the single market, we will have access to it, but we will not be a member the way we are now, would that trigger a second referendum?
I don't think there's any ambiguity about this whatsoever, so let me say this. I do not want Scotland to leave the European Union, full stop. not now and not in the future. I do not want to see a gap in our
I know that,
membership.
Mr.
I want our
Robertson.
position
What's the
within the
answer to
single
my
market.
question?
Well, the answer to the question is, I do not want us to leave the EU. So
Right.
if it becomes clear that there is a timetable that will take us out on hard Brexit terms, detrimental to our economy, then I will support a Scottish independence referendum. And if that needs to take place within the years before 2019, I'm in favour of that as well.
And what if we're going out on soft Brexit terms, wherever that means? Would that mean you wouldn't trigger the referendum?
Well, whatever you're making the point yourself there. Whatever that means, we don't
Well,
know.
you used hard
what any of
Brexit.
this
What
means
does
at the
that mean to
present
you?
time.
What does hard Brexit mean to you?
Well, it means taking us out of the single market. It means
Right.
having tariffs. So Scottish business, for example, the Scotch whisky industry, which is hugely important, facing tariffs selling to other European countries. You've kind of made the point that I've been trying to underline, Andrew, which is we have so little understanding of what the UK government is actually trying to do with its negotiations with the rest of the EU. What we've started is a process which seeks to protect Scotland's place in Europe, and if that means we have another referendum that will deliver an independent Scotland within the European Union, and that may be within a number of years, I'm in favour of that, as is the SNP.
Scotland runs by far the largest fiscal deficit in the Western world. The price of oil's collapsed. The oil industry is on its knees. Your financial sector is in poor shape as well. You've got very slow growth, and you couldn't tell us what the currency will be in an independent Scotland. Other than that, what is the economic case for independence today?
Well, of course, this week we've learned that the UK is facing losing £66 billion in revenue. The pound is heading through the
That was a project for your Treasury report, Mr. Robertson, and you know that is dated to back in April. What's the case for Scotland independence?
And the UK economy is heading in a direction where we can't even buy certain products on high street supermarkets. We did not choose the circumstances in which we found ourselves. We voted to remain within the European Union. The timetable that is being forced by the UK government is one that is forcing people in Scotland to a choice. Have we chosen all of the circumstances? No. Will all the economic circumstances be ideal? No, they won't. Are they for the UK? No, they're not.
All right.
So these are tough circumstances for everybody who is involved. The difference, though, is we have a democratic mandate in this country to remain within the European Union, and as Democrats, it behoves us to support the wishes of the voters of this country.
Wearing your new hat as deputy, can I just ask you, I mean, I did ask you what the economic case was, but we'll probably come back to that and I'll try and get an answer. But with your new role as deputy leader, this time last year, the SNP was dining out on how it was going to be the real opposition in the Westminster Parliament. Now, a year later, we see that you've wasted £230,000 on frivolous early day motions, celebrating a constituent getting into the final 13 of Miss Scotland, the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, and the unveiling of a Christmas tree. That's your members putting these things down. Costs money. How is that being the real opposition?
Goodness me. A political party goes to Parliament and asks questions and Prime Minister's questions, turns up in committees, takes part in debates and statements, and that's somehow something to be condemned. I note that other commentators, perhaps less partisan, have said that the SNP is now the effective opposition at Westminster, and week in, week out, I hold Theresa May and previously David Cameron to account, asking the difficult questions that the Labour Party, riven by internal division, is unprepared to do. Most neutral observers, Andrew, believe the SNP is doing a good job working at Westminster as the effective opposition, and my plan is to continue doing that so long as Scotland is part of the UK.
Well, at least thanks to one of your early day motions, I did know it was the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. I never realised that. Angus Robertson from the conference in Glasgow, the SNP conference, thanks for joining us.